Alright, here we are. Doom Eternal. This one took me about a week to put together, but holy crap, this is a good game. I'm actually pretty comfortable in saying that I believe this to be sort of a step forward for the first-person shooter genre as a whole. This whole single-player narrative first-person shooter thing has been around for a while, but it hasn't really been evolved on in quite some time. It was started with games like Unreal and Half-Life, and Half-Life 2 picked up that slack and innovated a little bit, and it just kept going until you got to games like Bioshock, for instance, which was a really awesome example of the sort of single-player FPS. But after that point, the whole genre kind of languished a bit. It became a lot less common, and it never really evolved. And eventually we got games like Prey, like Wolfenstein: The New Order, and like Doom 2016, that started to step it in a new direction, that took it, remembered what was cool about the sort of old-school arcade FPS, and took it in new directions that could only be done now with new technology, and the interest in this whole idea came back, and people really were craving these sorts of FPSs again. And personally, I feel that Doom Eternal is that final big step forward, that last big push that actually took the genre to a new place, and in my opinion actually allows it to set a bar for what single-player first-person shooters can actually be now. And I think one of the main things that actually helps to push that point forward is the fact that they've managed to shore up a lot of the weaker points of the previous Doom and actually improve all of that without really sacrificing anything along the way. And in my opinion, that's a really good indicator for a bar setter. And as an example, the overall level design is much more complicated this time around. Doom 2016 was a really good game, but it did have a certain predictable pattern to its level design, being mostly like Serious Sam or Painkiller style arenas, where you would get locked into it. Enemies would spawn in, kill all the enemies, it would unlock, and then you would go on a fairly linear path to the next one, and that would repeat, which is a pretty satisfying gameplay loop, all considered. I mean, those games were awesome, but Doom has always had a bit more of an open, sprawling concept to its level design than that, and that kind of dampened the experience a little bit. It was still fun, but it could have been better, and, this is the better. This is what it could have been. It is a much more open, sprawling, huge level design, but at the same time, they've actually managed to make the in-game map a lot more legible, a lot more easily usable. I was actually a little bit afraid when I saw the newly complex level design, because I remember the map in Doom 2016 being very bare bones. It did its job, but it wasn't the easiest thing to read. It was a bit of an eyesore at times, and I was afraid that on these much more complicated levels, it would become like almost useless. So they've actually just redesigned the whole thing and made it way more useful now. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, the idea that they've taken their weaknesses, they've made them a lot stronger, and they've made all of the other things connected to them stronger as well. They haven't really sacrificed on anything, really. The soundtrack is, of course, awesome. It is Mick Gordon again, only this time it's, in my opinion, actually even better than the Doom 2016 soundtrack, because it focuses more on the sort of djenty guitar riffs, and there's even a metal choir now, which is amazing, and a little bit less on the sort of electronica and the corrupted like electronic noises and things in between tracks. I like that kind of stuff, but I really like this newer interpretation a little bit better. It's just kind of flows really well, and in my opinion actually helps with the exploration and stuff, because it's a bit dynamic. You will hear some very like simple kind of riffs and stuff in the background when you're just exploring around that will suddenly like explode into this huge cacophony of noise when enemies spawn in, and it makes for it just kind of helps the experience feel more coherent, if that makes sense, because the music is an important part of the game, so having it present at all times and changing rapidly rather than suddenly as you explore is a really nice little touch. The levels are, in fact, so large this time around that when you get to the end of any given level, it actually unlocks a fast travel system, and you can go back to various points and use that to find collectibles and other stuff that you may have missed on your initial run-through. The only bad thing about this is that it doesn't enable when you go revisit the mission from Mission Select, which I don't feel makes any sense. It's a really useful system, and it lets you go back and get all those collectibles that you missed, but at the same time, you may want to not do that right now and instead use the in-game mission select to come back to the mission later and do those things again. Only if you do that, you have to get to the very end of the level again to unlock fast travel, which doesn't make any sense, because it seems like the whole point of fast travel is to get stuff you missed, and the whole point of mission select is to use it to get stuff you missed, so why would it take it away when you get to use it? I don't know. Other than that, though, the level design is just vastly improved. It actually reminds me a lot of like Doom 2 level design, only, brought to a much more modern age and without the gimmick levels and stuff, because you see all sorts of demons that are just infighting and traveling around and stuff. There aren't just a series of large arenas that enemies get spawned in waves. There are actual like ambient demons all around the place and stuff like that are already there when you come across them, and all that helps to create these really coherent, really nice levels that are a ton of fun to explore. And of course, as you would expect, they are absolutely laden with secrets, just tons of them, secrets everywhere of all kinds, secret encounters, secret toys to collect, albums of music, and all sorts of things like that. So that's kind of neat, because I mean, that's sort of always been a major point of Doom, was rewarding exploration. You're supposed to have all these weapons, but not a huge amount of ammo, so you want to go around and collect ammo and health and armor and stuff all the time. So making these really sprawling levels and having all sorts of crap hidden around for you to find is a really great thing. The combat itself is also something that has been kind of uncompromisingly overhauled with, well, you feel a lot stronger in this game, and that's kind of saying a lot because you were already like a force of destruction in the first Doom. Now, though, you're like some sort of force of nature and that just can't be stopped until you can, because the interesting thing about that is they've managed to make you feel even stronger while also making the game a lot harder at the same time. That was actually one problem with Doom 2016. Once you got pretty much all your weapons and stuff like that, you were just about unstoppable and everything would just fall before you and you may as well have just ended to the credits right there. But now the fights are a lot more complicated. The enemies have a lot more attacks to learn, and they're just more powerful in general, and there are a lot more of them. There's like double the number of demons in this game that there were in Doom 2016, so there's a lot more to actually encounter. So I like that they managed to make you feel so much stronger with all this cool new shiny stuff, while at the same time not making it trivialize the fight. You never really reach a point where you just feel so powerful that you may as well just win because the game isn't challenging anymore. It's pretty much challenging all the time. It's actually very hard. I'm actually playing on Ultraviolence, which is the hard mode, because I thought that would be a good idea. And it's rather painful, but it was also, I think, a really good decision because it just feels like a really well-balanced, really nice difficulty. Enemies are very threatening, but they also don't take like a bajillion hits to kill even a simple imp and stuff like that. I've not tried Nightmare yet, the like very hard mode. I'm kind of afraid of it, honestly, because of how difficult Ultraviolence is, but I may give it a go at some point. Overall, though, I really like the changes to the combat and how there's a lot you gotta keep an eye on. There's a lot you have to take care of. You gotta make sure you're using the flame belch for armor. You gotta make sure you're using your chainsaw for ammo. Make sure you're keeping all your ammo pools up because they're quite small this time around. Make sure you're using and charging the blood punch from glory kills because it's very useful for getting health and hitting large clouds of enemies, and it's called the blood punch, so of course you want to use it. There's also, of course, the BFG once you get that, and the Crucible when you get that, which are basically like I don't want you alive anymore kind of buttons that allow you to clear large screens but with very limited ammunition and or charges. And of course you also have to keep mobile with your double jump and your double dash and other new additions like the fact that you can climb onto certain walls like Spider-Man, and there are these little poles that you can swing around on as well. So the combat is just, it's got a lot more candy to it. There's just a lot more stuff to do, a lot more stuff to take care of, but at the same time, none of it really feels superfluous because you really need all of that. As hard as the encounters get, glory kills are important for health, chainsaw is important for ammo, flame belch is important for armor. Make sure you're using all of your weapons because this isn't the kind of game where you can just pick one weapon that you like and stick with it because that will not get you very far. You'll run out of ammo quite quickly, and a lot of demons will not really care about that weapon. Some of them are just a lot more weak to others, and you really need to actually, unlike in some games where like enemy weaknesses are just sort of things that you can take advantage of if you feel like it, in this case, because of the sheer number of enemies and how powerful they are, you really need to. You need to be able to keep your ammo up and keep the enemy waves sort of down with some of the more difficult or odd to take care of demons being like a prime example of things to take care of first, like archviles and marauders and stuff like that. When they appear, you really have to pay a lot of attention to them because they aren't just, bullet sponges. They really need to be taken care of in a more specific way. You can't just unload a whole bunch of stuff into them because you'll simply run out of ammo and they won't care. So overall, the combat has been overhauled in a very positive way. It makes each combat encounter more like a puzzle that you're meant to solve in whatever way that you see fit, rather than just a series of enemies, because you have to make sure you understand all of their weak points, all of their destructible points, all of the attacks they can do and how you avoid them, and all the things that they're weak to in terms of your arsenal. So yeah, like I said, it definitely makes each enemy encounter very much like a combat puzzle, and I think that's actually classic Doom, in my opinion. Doom 1 and Doom 2, the 90s shooters did have that. The combat arenas, the larger combat areas were kind of puzzle-ish, with ammo conservation, resources, power-ups and stuff like that being a very important consideration, and that is the same here. There are even some secrets in big combat arenas, like invincibility, infinite ammo, and stuff like that, quad damage that you can pop out and use, and of course the ever-present Berserk that allows you to literally rip demons in half, which is kind of amazing. And yeah, so the whole thing is, it's just Doom, but nitro-fueled. It's the same thing that you all kind of know and love, but with a whole bunch of shiny new bits and a really mean attitude, because it is very difficult now and you have to very much pay attention, and I really appreciate that. I haven't played a shooter this difficult in a long time without resorting to just make the enemies take forever to kill or something like that, which isn't really my definition of difficulty so much as it's just annoying. So yeah, I think it's a really, really solid combat engine at the core of all this, which is of course important because it's Doom, and that's what you're going to be doing most of the time, is killing demons. That's kind of the thing. The upgrade system from the previous Doom has returned, but in my opinion this time it's a little bit more necessary because of the aforementioned combat difficulty. You really need all the advantages you can get, and every different weapon has 2 mods as before, but some of them are different, some of them are the same, and a lot of the ones that are the same are tweaked a little bit because the weapons feel a little bit different this time. And the upgrades actually have upgrades this time. Each weapon mod that you can get will have at least 2, sometimes 3 upgrades that you can purchase for it with these points that you get from combat that will just enhance it in different ways. And you can also achieve a mastery upgrade, which is if you get a weapon mod and then get every upgrade for it, you will unlock a mastery challenge that you can do, which will involve using that weapon mod in some way a bunch of times to show that you're amazing with it, and then it will unlock some sort of mastery perk upgrade thingy after you do that. There are also these very late game items, these tokens, that allow you to actually bypass a mastery challenge if you want to, but they're very rare and kind of hard to find. Another thing that helps the combat feel just more satisfying in general are the new weapon sounds. The sound assets and animations for the weapons are super satisfying, and the fact that there is now a sort of damage engine modeling thingy for the demons where they actually come to pieces as you shoot them, which is amazing. So even small demons will lose large chunks of themselves as you shoot them, and the larger demons can actually have pieces of them broken off and larger bits permanently destroyed and stuff like that. You might start with like a normal Baron of Hell, but end up with like this weird flaming skeleton thing by the end because you've taken all of its skin and stuff off. It's really gruesome and really kind of satisfying because it makes you feel like you're doing damage to things even if you're not actually killing them yet. You can see the harder demons that take more shots that you're actually hurting them. They don't stay exactly the same looking throughout the entire battle, which is a really nice touch as well. You also have these crystal upgrades to your health, armor, and ammo pools, which are very necessary as well, and some Praetor suit upgrades, a lot of them, this time for different things. I know that one of the main complaints of Doom 2016 was that the upgrade system felt kind of out of place. I actually liked it, but I do understand that some people just want your average level of power to only really be determined by the weapons that you have ammo for right now, kind of how it used to be in the original Doom, so I understand that. But I do feel like the upgrade system this time around feels a lot better because there are a lot fewer upgrades that feel redundant and like they don't really need to be separate things anymore. And like I said, with the new AI for the demons and all the new attacks and stuff that they can do, having as much on your side as possible actually feels a lot more important this time around. So these upgrades do actually feel a lot more impactful and less superfluous. So I think that maybe some of that problem for some people has been solved a bit because the upgrade system is no longer quite so, I guess I wouldn't call it throwaway in Doom 2016. I mean, the weapon mods are kind of iconic to that game, but still, some of the upgrades weren't really necessary for you to use. Now, though, that's a little bit different. Graphically, I don't know exactly what this video is going to look like after YouTube's compression algorithm gets its hands on it. Probably not nearly as good looking as it was while playing, but the game is super impressive looking, all maxed out. This is completely maxed, by the way, just for demonstration purposes. It looks fantastic. The new engine that it are using is beautiful, and it actually runs really, really well. You can actually run this on its lower settings on like some not so great computers pretty easily, and it still looks really good. I think part of that is the art style has a lot more use of very vibrant colors, lots of purples, greens, like your primary colors and stuff that like Doom and Doom 2 used, especially in regards to like the demonified locations and stuff, having lots of bright colors. And this goes back to that. Doom 2016 was kind of pretty, but it was also a lot of like gray and red. And now you have a lot more variance in terms of the color palette that's being used and the overall environment you'll be in, from like these sweet, weird, magical medieval keeps to hell, of course, and big towers and other planets with some really neat sort of architecture and big mechs in the background and stuff like that. There's just a ton of love that's been poured into this game's level design and graphical appearance in general to make it really, really fantastic looking, and it definitely shows. Really, I don't think that any part of this game has been neglected for another part. The combat is awesome, the level design is great, the actual graphical intensity and everything is fantastic. The feedback for the combat is really nice. I don't really have a lot bad to say about this game. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect game, but man, this is really good. I've absolutely enjoyed my time with it so far, and I'm definitely going to go back and finish it after this in the next couple of days because it's just a ton of fun. I would, of course, absolutely recommend this. As far as my verdict goes, this is a wonderful game, and it is pretty much, in my opinion, what the new bar should be for single-player FPS. And I haven't got my hands on any of the multiplayer stuff yet. I know there's like a sort of invasion mechanic. I haven't really seen that in action yet, so I can't comment on that. But just as a purely single-player experience, it's phenomenal. It's the best FPS I've played in years, and I am excited to go and play more of it, and I'm excited to see what else they make for it, because it's just such a satisfying engine to base everything around that I think that pretty much whatever they do with it from this point on is going to be definitely worth playing. So that is Doom Eternal, an absolutely amazing, phenomenal shooter that sets the bar for me for a long time, hopefully. If you want to check it out yourself, the link to the Steam page is in the description below this video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, and thank you guys very, very much for watching. I'll see you next time.